In this episode of True Crime Black, we look at Washington, D.C.'s first serial killer. The man, known as the Freeway Phantom, terrorized the area for 17 months before disappearing without a trace. Scarily, the killer only targeted a specific demographic: young black girls and women. Will we ever find out the identity of the Freeway Phantom? With that said, let's get started. In 1971, a serial killer struck in Washington, D.C., for the first time in known history. Over the course of the next 17 months, the so-called Freeway Phantom kidnapped and murdered 6 young girls and teenagers between the ages of 10 and 18. And as he killed without consequences, the Phantom only grew bolder and more terrifyingly vicious. After kidnapping his 4th victim, the serial killer made her call her family. And a note in the pocket of the 5th victim taunted the police. The note read, "Catch me if you can." Who was the Freeway Phantom? Decades later, the case remains chillingly unsolved. The Freeway Phantom was a moniker given to a serial killer who operated from April 1971 to October of 1972. The Freeway Phantom was Washington, D.C.'s first serial killer who murdered 6 young girls during his spree. What was a key commonality all of those girls had? They were black. Carol Spinks was just 13 years old when she became the Freeway Phantom's first victim. She left her house one night to go to a 7-Eleven and was never seen alive again. 6 days later, Carol's body was found next to the I-295. She had been raped and strangled by her killer. He would then target Darlenia Johnson. The 16-year-old worked a summer job at Oxon Hill Recreation Center. That was until she failed to arrive for work one morning in July. Her body was found in the same area as Carol's body. 7 days later, Brenda Crockett, who was just 10 years old, was missing after seeing a movie. Nenomoshia Yates was 12 years old. She disappeared after going to the supermarket for groceries. Number 5 on the Phantom's victim list was Brenda Woodard. She was an 18-year-old woman who was last seen taking the bus home from dinner at a restaurant. The last known victim was 17-year-old Diane Williams. Diane was on her way home from spending time with her boyfriend. All of the Phantom's victims were found raped, strangled, and 5 of them had their shoes removed. According to the police, Brenda Woodard was more brutally attacked than the rest of the victims. That fact gave them early insight into the serial killer they were looking for. One of the key differences with Brenda's murder was that her killer left a note on her body. Interestingly, the note was in Brenda's handwriting. The note read, "This is tantamount to my insensitivity to people, especially women. I will admit the others when you catch me if you can. Freeway Phantom." According to former D.C. Police Detective Romaine Jenkins, an analysis of the handwriting showed that Brenda did not write it while under duress. This led the detective to believe that Brenda knew her killer and willingly went along with writing the letter, all the while being unaware of what her killer was planning. Brenda did become aware of what was happening at some point though. She had defensive wounds and was the only victim who was stabbed. She also was the only victim to be found with her shoes still on. And then there was Brenda Crockett. Detective Jenkins believes that Brenda's mother spotted her with the Phantom. On the night that she was taken, Brenda called her house 2 times. The first phone call was to tell her sister that a white man kidnapped her and took her to Virginia. The police believe that Brenda was fed this story by the Phantom in order to keep him off of their radar. Jenkins also believes that 10-year-old Brenda Crockett's mother might have seen the killer in action. Brenda had called her home twice on the night she was abducted. The first call was to tell her sister that she had been kidnapped by a white man and had been driven to Virginia, a story police believe was fabricated to throw them off the scent. When Brenda called a second time, she asked a very telling question. "Did my mom see me?" Brenda was asking this question to her mother's boyfriend. He immediately asked her how her mother could have spotted her if her abductor had taken her to Virginia. At that moment, he told Brenda to put whoever took her on the phone. Then the line went dead. Detective Jenkins was sure that this was proof of the Phantom being local. He believes that Brenda was told to make that phone call out of fear that the Phantom had been spotted by her mother as she was canvassing the neighborhood. "Why would you let her call home, not once, but twice?" Jenkins said. He had to make sure that the mother didn't see her. As the police worked to find answers, they came across a major clue. It appeared that he used St. Elizabeth's Hospital as an anchor point for their victim choices. St. Elizabeth's was a mental asylum in Washington, D.C. It is believed that the killer may have been someone familiar with the facility, perhaps a patient or a worker who knew the area. The Phantom also kept trophies. He would take textbooks, curlers, shoelaces, and other items from the girls he attacked. The hope is that someone may come across those items one day. As far as suspects go, the police haven't had many strong leads. After ruling out a group known as the Green Vega Rapists, the police focused on a man named Robert Askins. Askins was a known kidnapper and rapist who had previously been charged with homicide on 3 occasions. He had also spent time as a patient at St. Elizabeth's Hospital. When the police searched his home, they found documents with diction similar to the letter he forced Brenda Woodard to write. The police, however, were not able to find any hard evidence to link Askins to the murders. He denied any and all involvement in the killing spree. Askins died in April of 2010 while serving time in prison. It would appear that the Phantom was forensically aware enough to keep evidence away from the police. The deranged serial killer knew enough to wash the bodies, leave little DNA behind, and dump the bodies in different states. But there was seemingly yet another factor that many believe the killer had on his side. That factor is the race of his victims. "Those black girls didn't mean anything to anybody, I'm talking about on the police department," said Tommy Musgrove, head of the DC Police Homicide Unit. "If those girls had been white, they would have put more manpower on it, there's no doubt about that," he added. As the years passed, the Freeway Phantom investigation continued to remain open. Then, something took place that further supported the belief of police indifference to the victims. In 2009, the Washington, D.C. police admitted that they'd lost the case file. Evidence from the crimes, including possible DNA from the Freeway Phantom, was gone. Adding to the assumed callousness of the investigating officers, one of them is quoted as saying this: "Maybe it's over there in some box and we haven't stumbled across it. Who knows?" Those were the words of Detective Jim Trainum. Detectives have continued to investigate, attempting to rebuild the files. And the $150,000 reward for information in the case remains unclaimed. For the families of the victims, the tragedy still hurts just as much today as it did back then. "We were devastated," said Wilma Harper, the aunt of Diane Williams. "At first it didn't register in my head that she was really dead, but the reality soon hit home." Harper founded the Freeway Phantom organization to support the friends and family members of murder victims. The families of the 6 girls also supported each other. "At first, I couldn't talk to anyone or even look at pictures," Mary Woodard, the mother of Brenda, said. "People say they know what you're going through, but unless you've actually experienced the tragedy, you really don't know. Sharing with someone who's gone through the same thing helped me to deal better." While the Freeway Phantom case remains open, the Freeway Phantom organization continues to draw attention to unsolved murders and support the families of victims. "It's a two-way street," Harper said in a 1987 interview. "The police can't do it all by themselves. Members of the community have to consider it important enough to get involved and see that these murders are put to a stop." For some, there remain several potential reasons why the Freeway Phantom has been so difficult to catch once and for all. Some believe that, much like serial killer Ted Bundy, he was probably charming, and was someone who, on the surface, would not have appeared to be someone capable of committing such heinous acts. An excerpt from an article in Psychology Today reads, Organized killers are likely to be above average intelligent, attractive, married or living with a domestic partner, employed, educated, skilled, orderly, cunning and controlled. They have some degree of social grace, may even be charming, and often talk and seduce their victims into being captured, Psychology Today described. To this day, the serial killer known as the Freeway Phantom has never been caught.